Through the social media profiles of many politicians, and it doesn't take you long to find some form of abuse they've received. But soon the trolls behind it could be convicted of a new crime of intimidating election candidates, and those guilty could be barred from public office under government proposals being considered. In the run-up to last year's election, almost half the abusive messages sent to female MPs were sent to just one person, Diane Abbott. Last July, she told Parliament just how deep the depravity ran.
I have rape threats, described as a pathetic, useless, fat, black piece of ugly, fat, black and over and over again.
Amnesty International analysed the Twitter accounts of all female MPs for the 6 months before last year's election and discovered more than 25,500 abusive tweets. One recipient was Christine Jardine.
I know the abuse I suffered and the abuse that other elected politicians or people who are not elected, who just put themselves up for election, the abuse that they have to take online, what it does to your family, how it upsets them. You wonder if other people out there are seeing it and believing the things that are said about you. And it's putting people off politics, and we have to clamp down on that. But we also have to remember that this is not just a political problem, this is a problem in society.
Of course, the problem with a lot of these messages is you can't actually tell who's behind them. So one point this consultation will also look at is whether or not online political communications should have a digital imprint on them, making it clear who's responsible for them. And that's a plan backed by Parliament's Digital Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee, who today released their review into fake news, saying the UK faces a, quote, democratic crisis and calling for far tougher regulation of social networks. One of the report's authors is Damian Collins. He says MPs have been asleep at the wheel while the digital juggernaut has been allowed to speed off.
You look to the near future and this problem is probably going to get worse. Using virtual reality, augmented reality techniques, you can already create a fake speech given by someone in the place they never were to an audience they never met and pass it off as real and share that online. Imagine doing that with something really inflammatory during an election campaign. It could take you some time to prove that that film was fake. Now, we're going to need the help of the tech companies to stop that sort of information spreading. Otherwise, that could have a real outcome on elections in the future.
Facebook say they've taken down 2.5 million pieces of hate speech and disabled 500 million fake accounts globally in the first quarter of this year alone. The scale of the problem is vast. What's at stake is even bigger, say MPs, a real threat to our democracy.
Well, earlier I spoke to the Constitution Minister, Chloe Smith, and I started by asking her to explain the two specific things she's proposing today.
So what I'm doing today is launching a consultation document on a couple of measures that will help protect voters in our democracy. One of those is around protecting from intimidation, from criminal behaviour that can have an additional electoral sanction applied as well.
How?
To act as a deterrent against intimidation in our democracy. The how that is done is set out in the consultation document. The other thing that we're doing today is proposing that we enable greater transparency for voters to be able to see where political material comes from online.
And so that means that the kinds of ads that the Select Committee report has highlighted, where it wasn't clear where they were coming from, they will be illegal.
Yes, it could be relevant to the kind of recommendations that the Select Committee report is making. There are other points being made as well in other reports.
It seems quite clear that the law has fallen way behind the reality of where digital campaigning is now on the internet and the kinds of things that are going on. We need much more drastic reform, don't we?
Well, that may be so. And so what the government is going to do is look at that in the round across various reports that have recently been produced.
But it's clear we're going to need massive law change. I mean, the two things you're mentioning, fine, they need dealing with, but they're scratching the surface, aren't they?
Well, they're two very important things. And the reason they're important is they come right back to how the voter can be best protected.
Yes, no, I know, but what I'm talking about is actually what the Select Committee has highlighted is real fears over the safety of electoral outcomes. Don't we need something much, much bigger than what you're announcing?
Possibly, and as I've said to you quite clearly, the government is going to look at all of that in the round. There's a set
But
of
what
things
does that, I don't know what in the round means. What do you mean?
Well, I think you do. In the round means looking at several reports together.
Your colleague Damian Collins is suggesting that we now need the kind of investigation in Britain that the Americans have got with Robert Mueller. What's your view of that?
Well, perhaps. The government will, by the way, be responding more fully to that Select Committee report. I'm not in a position to give you the full response to it today.
But into Russian interference specifically is what we're talking about.
The government takes that very seriously, and indeed although we haven't seen any evidence of such interference being successful, we are extremely vigilant about it.
You say you haven't seen any evidence of Russian interference being successful. You're saying you have seen evidence of Russian interference in British electoral processes?
No, I'm saying we haven't. The British state has not seen evidence of it being
any
successful.
Evidence at all?
No, I'm saying the British state has not seen evidence of it being successful.
But them
and
trying,
what I'm consulting upon is a way to help voters be more informed about what they're seeing. Now, there's a set of things that the government is also doing.
But are you saying?
About
Sorry,
fake
just to clarify
news.
that. I mean, you're saying they haven't been successful. Are you saying that Russia has tried to interfere in British elections or the referendum?
Well, I think journalism has made quite clear that there have been alleged attempts, and I think we also see quite clearly that Russia has attempted such things perhaps in other countries' elections. What is of interest to me and to my colleagues in government is whether we see evidence of that being successful in UK elections, and what we can do A, to make sure that as a state and as a country we are protected, but B, to make sure that voters themselves are well informed. That has to be the bedrock of this.
Do you have confidence in the Electoral Commission? Do you think it's strong enough?
Yes, I do. They are the regulator of elections, and I work with them very closely.
Because a lot of your colleagues are undermining it at the moment and saying, you know, that they have been wrong to pursue Darren Grimes, the young man who's been fined £20,000. What's your message to them?
I can't speak for colleagues, but as I say, as the Minister for the Constitution, I work very closely with the Electoral Commission and I have a good relationship with them.
It's quite confusing for the public, though. I mean, you know, Conservative MPs out there saying the Electoral Commission is wrong. Your message to them is the Electoral Commission is right and has your confidence.
Well, yes, and I stand by what I've said in Parliament only recently, that we have an electoral regulator for a good reason. They do a job. We ask them to do that job in an independent manner.
And you will be looking at giving them greater powers when you look at all of these?
Well, I'm aware that's something that actually they themselves have asked for. There's a number of proposals and suggestions that have been made recently, and the government needs to look at those in the round altogether.
A lot of people are very concerned about whether the referendum result is safe, whether it can be trusted, given everything that's happened. Do you think the referendum result can be trusted?
Yes, I do, and I've said so in the House of Commons, and very happy to say so again.
I mean, do you think British politics has been asleep on the job to some extent? You know, sort of technology has massively overtaken where the law is. Have we been complacent?
No, I don't think complacency is the right word, but I think it is fair to say that actually there are several points that have been raised for how to improve electoral law and take it onwards so that it does fit the times we live in. That's obviously the right kind of area to be looking at, because, as you say, technology moves on, people's lives move on. We want to make sure that electoral law, of course, suits the times we live in and the lives we lead.